What is up, everyone? Welcome back to my channel. Hope everyone is having a good day. I know I am personally, and I'm excited to bring you another deck that I built for about under $30. So it's a budget deck. Woo! And it's completely surrounded the avatar cards. I actually built this deck by just going to my local game shop, picking up cheat cards there that were avatar, and then anything that I couldn't find at my local game shop, I just went online, TCG Player, Card Kingdom, things like that. I've been a fan of the Avatar ever since I was a little kid. I remember watching it growing up. And then even today, I actually rewatched it very recently as an adult, and it still holds up. And one of my favorite characters on that show was Uncle Iroh. He's a pretty complex character. He's funny, and he's just a real rock in the group. So when the set came out, I had to look for an Iroh card, and I landed on Iroh the Grand Lotus. He's a 5/5 creature, 5 mana. He has Firebending 2. And then the really cool thing about Iroh is on your turn, any instant or sorcery card that is in your graveyard, you can actually play it for its mana cost again, but it actually highlights the lesson cards within the avatar set as well. Any lesson card that's in your graveyard on your turn, you can actually pay 1 colorless mana to cast it again. So the whole idea behind this deck is throw your instance, sorcery cards, and your lesson cards into your graveyard, cast them for cheap, and really screw your opponents, buffing your creatures and attacking. So I'm excited to show off this deck. We'll jump right into it, and I will see you there. I want to highlight what Iroh does again. So Iroh the Grand Lotus, 5 mana, 5/5. He has Firebending 2. So whenever you're attacking, you're going to be getting 2 red mana that you can utilize during your combats. And then during your turn, each non-lesson instant and sorcery card in your graveyard has flashback, and the flashback cost is equal to that card's mana value. But then the other cool thing, the bottom text, during each turn, each lesson card in your graveyard has flashback 1. So a lot of the cards in this deck are going to be lesson cards, and the whole idea and strategy behind it is we want to dump those cards into the graveyard, and then utilizing that cheap mana value, recast them to either screw our opponents, buff our creatures, things like that. All right, next let's dive into some of the creatures and take a look to see what we have in here. So your creatures, again, all these are going to be avatar themed for the most base. We have the Earth King. So when the Earth King enters, you create a 4/4 green bear creature token. And then whenever one or more creatures attack with power 4 or greater, you get to search your library for a basic land type. So just some mana ramp there. Hermitic Herbalist, you add 1 mana of any color, and then you could also tap it to add 2 mana in a combination of colors. Spend this only to cast lesson spells. So it's pretty strong. Majority of the cards in this are lessons, so she's definitely a must add within there. Sokka, when Sokka enters, you discard 2 cards, and then you may draw that many cards. And then whenever you cast an artifact or lesson, you put a +1/+1 on him. So we're going to be casting a lot of those cards from the graveyard or in our hand. So Sokka's going to be getting big. And then he's also going to allow us to, discard cards into the library or the graveyard to continue to kind of cast those with Iroh. Boar-q-pine, we're going to be casting a lot of spells, so he's going to be getting +1/+1 whenever we're doing so. So that is very strong. Professor Zay, he's going to be discarding cards into our graveyard, then drawing our cards. And then it's very similar to True Ancestry. We can actually bring a card back from the graveyard to our hand to cast it again. Hopefully get it a 3rd time around. So Professor Zay is pretty strong. May has prowess, so it's going to get +1/+1 whenever you cast an instant or sorcery. So she's going to become stronger. And then she also has Exhaust 3. You can give double strike with her 1 time. Guru, when Guru enters, you look at the top 5 cards of your library. You may reveal Lesson, Saga, or Shrine card from among them, put them into your hand, and put the rest on the bottom of your library. And then whenever you cast a Lesson or Saga Shrine card, you put a +1/+1 on another target creature. Again, we're going to be slinging a lot of Lesson and sorceries and things like that, so this is going to be giving some people big buffs there. Dragonfly Swarm has flying, ward 1. This creature's power is equal to the number of non-creature, non-land cards in your library. Hopefully that's a lot with us dumping them in there. And then whenever this creature dies, if there's a lesson card, you draw a card. Platypus Bear, when this creature enters, you mill 2 cards. Exactly what we want. And as long as there's a lesson card in your graveyard, this creature can attack as though it has Defender. 99% of the time when I've played this deck, I've always had lesson cards in there, so Platypus Bear has been able to do stuff. Earth Rumble Wrestlers, I would say this is probably one of the weaker cards. I was hoping to get Toph Hard-Headed Teacher and replace it with Earth Rumbler, but when I got the card from TCG Player, they didn't have the card in there, so had to go ahead and put this in here. But I'm still looking for Toph Hard-Headed Teacher. She's definitely going to be an upgrade from this. But all this creature does, it has reach, and this creature gets +1/+0 and has trample as long as a land creature or land has entered the battlefield this turn. Master Paku has prowess, so it gets +1/+1. And then also, whenever Master Paku becomes tapped, target players mill X cards, where X is the number of lesson cards in your graveyard. So you can either do that to yourself or another player, just depending on what the situation is. More than likely, you'll be doing it to yourself because we want those lesson cards in the graveyard. Wall-top Sentry, reach, death touch, and then whenever this creature dies, if there's a lesson card in your graveyard, you gain 2 life. Combustion Man's going to be sick. We're going to be pumping a lot of counters into him. And basically what Combustion Man reads is when he attacks, you get to pick a target permanent that opponent controls. They get to decide if you destroy that target permanent outright, or they have to take damage equal to Combustion Man's power. So if we're pumping a lot of +1/+1 counters into him, who knows what it's going to be. They either have to sack that creature or, deal big damage to their face. So Combustion Man's pretty sick. The Mechanist, so whenever you're casting non-creature spells, you create clue tokens. We're going to be doing that a lot, so you'll be having a lot of clue tokens to help with card draw. And then you can also tap him until end of turn, a target artifact token you control becomes a 3/1 construct with flying. So if you ever needed more creatures with all those clue tokens, it's always nice to have him. Sparring Dummy, it's Defender, but you can tap. You may put a land milled this way into your hand. You gain 2 life if there was a lesson card milled this way. Zuko, of course, Zuko's got to be in the deck. It's his uncle that we're playing with. He has Firebending 3, so he's going to allow us to help with some of those combat tricks. And then if we ever do need it, we can always pay 3, exile the top card of my library, and then, playing that card that turn. Katara, at the beginning of your end step, if Katara's become tapped, you put a +1/+1 counter on her, so she's just constantly going to be getting bigger. And then if you Waterbend 6, you can, draw a card with her if you ever need that. He has Firebending 1. And then the other thing is if you exhaust him, you put a +1/+1 counter on him. And then your next lesson spell you cast this turn, you can copy it and choose new targets for it. So, hopefully you have like a big card or something like that that you want to play, and then you can actually do it twice. So he's pretty cool in regards to this deck. Uncle Iroh makes a second appearance within here, but lesson spells you cast cost 1 less to cast. So if you're actually flashbacking something from your graveyard, instead of it just being 1, you can cast it for free. So Uncle Iroh is pretty awesome. And then same thing from your hand. Serpent Pass, if there are 3 more lesson cards in your graveyard, you may cast the spell as though it has flash. And then spells cost 1 less to cast for each non-creature land card in your graveyard. So again, we'll be pumping those. So hopefully this is, relatively cheap when we're casting it. Just a mana dork, you can tap it for a green, and if you have a power 4 or greater, you can actually tap for 2 green instead. Fire Nation Cadets, going to give him Firebending 2, as long as there's a lesson card in your graveyard, which hopefully there is, and then you can pay 2 to buff it. Bumi is very strong within this. You choose up X, where X is the number of lesson cards in your graveyard. So as long as you have 3 lessons, you get all 3. You can either put 3 +1/+1 counters on him, target player scries 3 card, or you can Earthbend 3. And then finally, Gran-Gran, very similar to Iroh. When she becomes tapped, you draw a card, discard a card. Awesome mechanic to get our cards into the graveyard. And then non-creature spells you cast cost 1 less to cast, as long as there's 3 or more lesson cards in your graveyard. All right, so jumping into some of the instance and lesson cards within here. So this is going to be just like card draw and things like that within decks. So this one, you search your library for 4 land cards with different names and reveal them, and the opponent chooses 2 of them, and you put the chosen cards into the graveyard, and then the rest in the battlefield tab. So some nice mana ramp there. Solstice, you exile the cards from your library until you exile a non-land card. You may cast that card without paying its mana cost. If the mana is less than or equal to the number of lands you control. If you don't cast that card this turn, you just put it into your hand. It also has flashback 7, but if you're playing this on your turn with Iroh, it's just going to be 1. So that's pretty awesome to have that. Abandoned Attachments, going to be card draw. You also get to discard a card into your graveyard, which is exactly what we want. Frantic Search, we're discarding, drawing, and untapping 3 lands, so basically making it free, so that's awesome. And it's got cute Momo on there. Accumulate Wisdom, you look at the top 3 cards of your library, you put 1 of them to your hand, but if you have 3 or more lessons in your graveyard, you get to keep all 3 of those cards. So this card is very, very strong within this deck. Seismic Sense, look at the top X cards of your library, where X is the number of lands you control. You may reveal a creature or a land from among them, and then put them in your hand. Put the rest in the graveyard in any, or bottom of your library in any order. And then Waterbending Lesson, you pay 3, and then you can actually waterbend 3. You don't have to discard a card, but we're going to be wanting to, so maybe not even pay that waterbending. And then finally, Leaves from the Vine. What a sad song within there. It has to be in this deck too. But you mill 3 cards and then create a food token, which is always awesome. Then your second saga is going to be a +1/+1 counter up onto 2 target creatures you control, and then you draw a card if there's a lesson card in your graveyard. These ones are going to be more of like our mana ramping. So we have like Rampant Growth within here. Aang's Journey is going to give us a land. Hopefully we can pay its 1 mana cost to get it back on our turn. Cycle of Renewal, you search your library, put 2 basic lands in there, and then they come in tap, but you do have to sacrifice 1. Now, if you do have like an Earthbend card, you can actually sacrifice that one and not remove it, so that's always strong with something like this. True Ancestry, you return up to 1 target card from your graveyard to your hand, so that's pretty awesome. Dramatic Reversal, untap all permanents you control. And Energybending, you all lands that you have are basically every land type, and then you can draw a card. And these are going to be more like utility type of cards, or buffing them during our turns. So like Octopus Form, target creature gets +1/+1 and gives hexproof. Maybe if someone's trying to attack Iroh or something like that, you can always put this on him, so that's nice to make sure that he's not bothered. How to start a Riot, your creatures gain menace, and then creatures target player controls gets +2/+0 until end of turn. Help with buffing and pushing through. Pillar Launch is going to be +2/+2, gain reach until end of turn. Now there are things like this, so this is not a lesson card, but again, if you're paying it back for its flashback cost, it's only going to cost a green mana, so why not put something like this into there if we're trying to buff our creatures to hopefully kind of push through and kind of get those for free. So that's why I do have some instant cards within here that are very cheap, or same thing with sorceries, just so I can continue to kind of buff or do combat tricks during my attack phases and things like that. Cunning Maneuver, same thing. Target creature gets +3/+1 until end of turn. You create a clue token. Giant Growth, they're going to get +3/+3 until end of turn. Fire Nation Attack, you create 2/2 red soldier tokens with Firebending. The flashback cost for this is 9, but with Iroh, it would only be the 5 instead, so pretty strong there. Rocket Launch, we get the Earthbend, also has flashback 6, but if we have Iroh, we're only going to use 3 there. And then this one is just Bender's Waterskin. You untap this artifact on each player's untap step, and then you can actually tap it for 1 mana of any color. And then finally, this is going to be more of like keeping our opponents at bay and making sure they're not doing anything. So Secret Waterbending, I would actually say this is, or Bloodbending, this is going to be more like an Ender type of card. It costs 4 blue mana, but if we put it into the graveyard, which we're going to be hopefully doing with milling and stuff like that, think about it, you're only casting that for 1 colorless mana. And then if you waterbend it, and probably should read what the card does, but if you pay its mana cost normally, you actually control a opponent's attack phase. So you basically do everything with combat, you control all their creatures and things like that. Now if you do waterbend, you actually control their entire turn. So you're looking at their hand, making all their decisions. So it's a really cool card, and I actually got to play this once within the last game that I played, and it basically won me the game, but Secret Waterbending, definitely a cool addition to this. Zuko's Exile, you exile target artifact, creature, or enchantment controls, and you create a clue token. For 5 mana, that seems pretty steep, but again, if we're exiling it, hopefully we can get something rather cheap, or in total, like we could be paying 6 mana to exile 2 artifact, creature, or enchantment, so it's pretty cool. Redirect Lightning is an additional cost to cast this spell. You may pay 5 or pay 2, and you change target spell or ability with a single target. Combustion Technique, this is going to deal damage equal to 2 plus the number of lesson cards in your graveyard to a target creature. So if we have a lot of lesson cards in there, this is going to be dealing some major damage. Sokka's Haiku, counter target spell, you draw a card, then the mill 3, and then tap a target land. It'll Quench Ya, counter target spell unless its opponent pays 2. Origin of Metal Bending. Again, you can put +1/+1 counters a target creature you control and it gains indestructible, or you destroy target artifact or enchantment. Firebending. Lesson, this is going to be, it deals 2 damage, but if you kick it, it pays 5 damage instead to a creature. This one, you're basically going to have your creatures, attack or fight something and deal damage to that. So Rocky Rebuke. Lightning Strike, you're just dealing 3 damage to any target. Earthbending Lesson, Earthbend 4. And this is like another cool thing, like 4 mana, boom. And you can actually go ahead and pay 1 mana right away, and then you basically have 2 4/4 creatures just automatically. So it's really sick to have something like that. Zuko's Offense deals 2 damage to any target. Jet's Brainwashing. This is another really strong card. Basically, what you do is when you cast it, if you cast it normally, you get that creature can't block that turn, but if you kick it, you actually get control of that creature and it can attack for you that turn as well. So it's always nice to have something like that. And again, if we're kicking it from the graveyard and things like that, that's pretty cool. Iroh's Demonstration. Iroh deals 1 damage to each creature your opponent controls, and then Iroh also can deal 4 damage to target creature if you go with that option instead. Price of Feudum, you're destroying artifact or a land. Again, if you do, they have to get a basic land, but you get to draw a card. And then Boomerang Basics, you return a non-land permanent to its owner hand. If you control that, you draw a card. That is my Iroh the Grand Lotus budget deck that I created for about under $30. So Pocketbook is very happy, and I'm happy with the deck overall as well. It's all Avatar theme, which is what I was exactly looking for. And I think it performs pretty well. To use an example from yesterday, took second place with it, and I probably could have took first, but I made a mistake, and I suck at Magic. So it's how the game rolls sometimes. But overall, let me know what you think of it. Comment down below. Say, hey, it's awesome. Hey, it sucks. You need to learn to make decks better. Or, hey, what card you would add and things like that. Also, leave a like and then follow and subscribe for future videos. And I will see you on the next one. See ya.